Welcome back. In our last discussion, we explored the crucial first step of identifying compliance risks. But simply knowing what the risks are is only half the battle. Now we must delve into the process of truly understanding them. Embarking on a compliance risk assessment is much like preparing for a journey into uncharted territory. You wouldn't set off without a map, a compass, and a clear plan, and the same principle applies here. The initial phase is all about meticulous planning and defining the scope of your assessment, a step that is absolutely fundamental to its eventual success. You must first establish clear objectives, asking yourself what you are trying to achieve with this specific assessment. Are you conducting a broad, enterprise-wide review, or are you focusing on a particular business unit, geographic region, or a specific regulatory area like data privacy or anti-corruption? This decision on scope is paramount because it dictates the resources you'll need, the stakeholders you must involve, and the timeline you'll be working against. It's about drawing the boundaries of your investigation, ensuring that your efforts are concentrated and not diluted across an unmanageable area. You'll need to assemble the right team, a cross-functional group of individuals who bring diverse perspectives from legal, finance, operations, and human resources, as their collective expertise will be invaluable. Furthermore, you must define the methodology you will employ, deciding on the qualitative and quantitative techniques you will use to evaluate risks, which we will explore in more detail shortly. This planning stage also involves securing the necessary buy-in from senior leadership, as their visible support lends a critical layer of authority and seriousness to the entire endeavor. Consider this phase your architectural blueprint. Without a solid and well-thought-out plan, the entire structure you're about to build will be fundamentally unstable and unlikely to withstand scrutiny. You must also consider the risk appetite and risk tolerance of your organization, concepts that define the amount and type of risk the organization is willing to accept in pursuit of its objectives. This foundational work ensures that the subsequent steps are not just a series of procedural tasks, but a coherent and strategic effort to safeguard the organization. The clarity you achieve here will ripple through the entire process, making every subsequent action more effective and purposeful. It is the bedrock upon which a robust and defensible risk assessment is built. Once your blueprint is in place and the scope is clearly demarcated, the next logical progression is the systematic collection of data, the raw material from which you will construct your understanding of the risk landscape. This isn't a passive activity of simply waiting for information to arrive. It requires a proactive and multifaceted approach to gathering both quantitative and qualitative data points from across the organization. Think of yourself as a detective, piecing together clues from various sources to form a complete picture. You will likely employ a variety of techniques, such as conducting structured interviews with key personnel in different departments, from senior executives who can provide a high-level strategic view to frontline employees who have invaluable on-the-ground insights into operational realities. Well-designed surveys and questionnaires can also be powerful tools, allowing you to gather consistent data from a large and geographically dispersed population efficiently. However, don't underestimate the power of direct observation and workshops, which can uncover nuances and unspoken assumptions that surveys might miss. It is equally important to delve into the organization's existing documentation. This includes reviewing past audit reports, incident logs, whistleblower complaints, previous risk assessments, and relevant policies and procedures. Analyzing this historical data can reveal patterns, trends, and recurring issues that are indicative of underlying control weaknesses. You should also look externally, examining industry benchmarks, regulatory enforcement actions against peer companies, and publications from professional organizations to understand the broader context in which your organization operates. For instance, seeing a competitor fined for a specific anti-bribery violation should immediately prompt you to scrutinize your own controls in that area more closely. The goal here is comprehensiveness and triangulation, using multiple sources to validate your findings and ensure that your assessment is not based on a single, potentially biased point of view. A robust data collection process ensures that the subsequent analysis is grounded in reality, reflecting the actual state of compliance within the organization rather than a theoretical or idealized version. With a rich repository of data at your disposal, the process moves into the analytical heart of the risk assessment, the evaluation and prioritization of the identified risks. This is where you transform raw information into actionable intelligence, a process that requires both analytical rigor and informed judgment. You are no longer just collecting facts. You are now interpreting them to determine the significance of each risk to the organization. The most common and effective framework for this evaluation involves assessing two key dimensions for each identified risk: its likelihood of occurring and the potential impact it would have if it did. Likelihood, often rated on a scale from rare to almost certain, considers the probability of a risk event materializing, taking into account the existing controls in place. Impact, which can be assessed on a scale from insignificant to catastrophic, measures the potential consequences of the risk, which could be financial, reputational, operational, or legal. For example, a minor breach of an internal administrative policy might be highly likely but have a very low impact, whereas a significant violation of a major anti-corruption law might be less likely but would carry a catastrophic impact. To bring a degree of objectivity to this process, it's crucial to use a predefined rating scale and clear definitions for each level of likelihood and impact, which should have been established during your planning phase. The product of this analysis is often visualized in a risk matrix or a heat map, which plots risks based on their likelihood and impact scores. This visual representation is an incredibly powerful tool for communication, allowing you to clearly distinguish between high-priority risks that demand immediate attention, those in the top right quadrant of the map, and lower-priority risks that may require less urgent action. It is in this phase that you move from a long list of potential problems to a prioritized agenda for action. This prioritization is not a purely mechanical exercise. It requires seasoned judgment and discussion among the risk assessment team and relevant stakeholders to ensure the ratings accurately reflect the organization's specific context and strategic priorities. Without this critical step of evaluation and prioritization, you would be left with a daunting and undifferentiated list of risks, making it impossible to allocate resources effectively and focus on what truly matters. Following the meticulous process of identifying, analyzing, and prioritizing your risks, the next crucial stage is to document your findings and communicate them effectively to the relevant stakeholders, most notably senior management and the board of directors. A risk assessment that is not properly documented and communicated is, for all practical purposes, an assessment that never happened. The final report is the tangible output of your entire effort, serving as the official record of the assessment process, its findings, and its recommendations. This report should be structured to be clear, concise, and, above all, actionable. It needs to begin with an executive summary that provides a high-level overview of the key risks and the overall state of the compliance environment, tailored for an audience that is short on time but needs to grasp the essential takeaways quickly. The body of the report should then elaborate on the details, outlining the scope and objectives you defined at the outset and the methodology you employed to conduct the assessment. This transparency is vital for the credibility of your findings. For each of the significant risks you identified, especially those high-priority ones from your heat map, you must provide a detailed description. This includes explaining the nature of the risk, the potential root causes, the existing controls that are in place to mitigate it, and an honest evaluation of the effectiveness of those controls. It is here that you articulate the residual risk, the risk that remains even after accounting for the current control environment. Presenting your findings using visual aids like the aforementioned risk heat map, charts, and graphs can make complex information much more digestible and impactful. The report should not merely be a catalog of problems. Its ultimate purpose is to drive action. Therefore, the report must conclude with a clear set of recommendations for remediation or mitigation for the highest priority risks. These recommendations should be practical, specific, and assign clear ownership to individuals or departments to ensure accountability. The tone of the report is also critical. It should be objective and balanced, avoiding overly alarmist language while still conveying the necessary sense of urgency for the most critical issues. This formal documentation serves not only as a roadmap for immediate improvement, but also as a baseline against which future assessments can be measured, demonstrating the evolution and maturity of the compliance program over time. The culmination of your planning, data collection, and analysis is the development of a comprehensive risk assessment report, but the process does not simply end with its delivery. The final and arguably most critical step is to use this report as a catalyst for continuous improvement by developing and implementing robust risk mitigation plans. This is where the theoretical understanding of risk translates into concrete actions designed to strengthen the organization's defenses and reduce its vulnerability. For each of the high-priority risks identified in your report, you need to formulate a specific action plan. This involves moving beyond the general recommendations in the report to define detailed steps, establish realistic timelines for completion, and allocate the necessary resources, both financial and human. It is absolutely essential to assign a specific, named individual as the owner for each mitigation plan. This fosters a strong sense of accountability and ensures that someone is responsible for driving the plan forward and reporting on its progress. The mitigation strategies themselves can take various forms. You might choose to avoid a risk entirely by ceasing a particular activity or exiting a specific market. More commonly, you will seek to reduce the risk by implementing new or enhanced controls, such as introducing more robust due diligence procedures for third parties, updating policies to reflect new regulatory requirements, or deploying new technologies to automate monitoring. In some cases, you might decide to transfer a portion of the risk, for instance, by purchasing insurance. Finally, there may be certain risks that the organization consciously decides to accept, typically because the cost of mitigation outweighs the potential impact, a decision that itself must be formally documented and approved by leadership. The creation of these mitigation plans should be a collaborative effort, involving the risk owners and the relevant business units to ensure that the proposed actions are practical and can be effectively integrated into existing workflows. Once these plans are in motion, the compliance function's role shifts to one of oversight and monitoring. You must track the implementation of these plans, regularly follow up with the risk owners, and periodically test the effectiveness of the newly implemented controls to ensure they are working as intended. This entire cycle of assessment, reporting, mitigation, and monitoring is not a one-time event. It is a continuous, iterative process that allows the compliance program to adapt to an ever-changing business and regulatory landscape, ensuring its ongoing resilience and effectiveness. I trust this detailed walkthrough has provided you with a solid framework for conducting a thorough and effective compliance risk assessment. See you in the next lecture.